I wanted to ask you guys. So one of the things I took away from, I kind of, in a broad sense, am pretty well versed in the history of the back room. But one of the things I wasn't so well versed in was its humble beginnings. And one of the things I really enjoyed about what I saw on a preview clip was how you captured and laid the foundation for what became the back room as it's known in a broader sense. But when you talk to Dan and Dave, and they were great, by the way, and I love there's a graphic in the film where you show the two buildings next to each other, and then they knocked down some walls and paved over the courtyard or
Yeah.
whatever, and turned it into one big building, which is the back room that we all came to know and love. But going back before that, and then you even talk about the fact that the back room actually started where today is the Thundercloud Subs. And
Mhm.
those of us that live in Austin pass by
To
that
be
building
clear,
all the
and this
time.
is just me for concept, Dan and Dave are the country act.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
making sure because we're pretending no one has seen the trailer, right? So the teaser. So
Right. So yeah, I was going to lend some context to that. But so the
sweet.
point is that Dan and Dave were sort of this country western duo. They had a backing band, but they were sort of the leaders of the band, I guess. And there's a quote from one of the guys where he says something about, the back room became known for being this loud and rowdy place
Mhm.
for debauchery and hell raising. And we're kind of proud to have laid the groundwork for that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are aware of that. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about your interview segment with Dan and Dave. And then
Great question.
after that, tell me something. So that's something I learned about the back room. So after you tell me about interviewing Dan and Dave, then tell me something each of you learned about the venue that you didn't know until you started digging into this film.
Man, Dan and Dave, that was the kind of a brainchild spark idea that came from Dave Pruitt because he had found that footage. So this is how it worked. He found that footage and he said, you might want to go ask these guys and see if they're still around. And so that footage led me to Artie Passes, who played with them, and he's like, "Yeah, I can get those guys for you for an interview." And from what I understand, uh, what I was told by their family members, because they wanted, they contacted me and they were like, "Okay, so what are you doing? You're doing a film about that. How are you gonna use our grandfathers in this movie, and how are you gonna use our parents in this movie?" And so I told them, I explained, and they were excited and just over the moon, just helpful and happy to be a part of this. They were really awesome, an awesome couple of guys that they came in and they gave us, like, I want to say a good hour and a half interview of just stories about Ronnie Rourke, about how they commanded, and they were kind of considered, at least according to them, they were kind of like the real kind of like, they had a residency there for 10 years, 12 years, something like that, when the back room was first starting. And so they played every Friday night, almost every Friday and Saturday night. And so they had a long history with the place. And they were just really funny guys. They were known as being real sarcastic and messing with the crowd. And they were really excited to be a part of this film. Another person we interviewed was Van Wilkes, and he ended up not being in the final cut as well. But Van Wilkes also is a part of that history of the backroom itself. And so I kind of laid it out that Dan and Dave was kind of like one of the first not founding, but like one of the first duo acts that kind of laid the groundwork of this club and how it wasn't really kind of just another standard country hole in the wall kind of place. It was something that they were kind of turning the building into something of their own and using the venue for themselves and playing around with the crowd. And so I thought that was a cute sentiment when Dan had said, I kind of, this place was known for raising hell. I kind of feel like we were a part of that.
Yeah.
And that's it really, it really was kind of like a really fun thing to start the film off as far as the history standpoint.
Kind of following a bloodline, sounds like.
Yeah, and then so yes, with the son, and so the only downside of that with the Dan and Dave story was that when we were going to premiere the trailer, the day that we premiered the trailer, hours before we premiered the trailer, Dan passed away. His daughter texted me, and his son texted me and said that his dad had passed away during the day. And he was really excited about the film. He was telling everybody that he's in this movie. And it was just kind of like oh, man, that was a bummer. And but since then, his son, he's reached out to me along with Nico, and we hang out though. I hang out with them, and they really love that we got to put his father in this film, and it was great overall. So I'm glad that they were able to still exist in this film, for their family and for people to know about this building and them and part of this history.
Yeah.
But to answer your second question, at least for me, I never knew that the original back room was down there by where the Riverside Liquor and the Thundercloud Clubs was. Out front.
Yeah.
Down the hill. That was something till we started this film, I had no idea about that.
Do you guys remember, sorry, this is not off topic. It's location. Do you guys remember, I mean, I'm a little bit older, but when I got here in 80, there was a venue called Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. You heard about that place?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was on the same block.
Yeah. There's people that talked about that. And and we decided to trim that part of, because a lot of people brought that up, especially Van Wilkes,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of people, they were saying, well, Mother Earth, and then so
Mark Geary, drummer, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mark Geary of Dangerous Toys, just to give him a little bit of glitter, he played drums in a band called the Jacks, and they played Mother Earth like every weekend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we had to just, as far as the film component, we had to take part of that out, just because we had to like drive it along and didn't want to confuse too many people of,
sure,
okay, there's, the back room, and then there was the Copper Dollar, and then wait, there was Mother Earth. And then so we just decided to kind of trim that and kind of make it a little bit more efficient as far as pacing goes.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to confuse with your rhetoric and your arrow, your compass. Mm-hmm. But the history of that strip mall, you could say, the history. And I mentioned it yesterday on my email to you guys. It's hallowed ground.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Austin, Texas music history. It's hallowed ground just as much as the drag is, down on those old venues used to be down on campus. The original Antone's was down there when I got here. All this shit needs to be told, but it's kind of a different story that may already have been told in another documentary that was focused on an artist or something. But
John, what'd you learn? What'd you learn about the film when you started digging in?
Actually, we had started the film when we had taken notes. We had started it already at the top of the hill, and we backtracked because that was one of the biggest eye-opening things that we found out, was that it started down at the bottom, and then we started doing some research. But I do want to say that one of the coolest things with Dan and Dave, that they brought in a vinyl of a live recording, and it said Dan and Dave live at the back room. And there was I think it was called Phantom Recording. There was a guy that would record albums and drive up in a van and connect straight to the soundboard.
Yeah.
And they brought the vinyl with them, and they had it there. And I was so surprised with everything. That entire interview was one of my favorite.
Yeah.